All right, welcome back to another episode of Travel Ball Talk. I'm your host, Rich Prado, owner of Play in School. Today, I'm heading across the bridge, heading up the Eastern Shore over to Ocean City, Maryland, to talk with Delmarva Aces owner and founder Dave Whigham. Now, for those of you who are geographically challenged like me, Delmarva, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia. Pull up the map. You'll understand what's going on over there. There's a whole lot of water, and it's just a nice coastal area. Dave, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on. Good. Just a normal day here in good old Ocean City.
Yeah, we were just talking before we hit record. Ocean City. Well, you go ahead and tell me what you right before we hit record. How many people are permanent residents, and what's that balloon up to during the summertime?
Yeah, so, this is an interesting town. We have 30,000 people here in the off season, and it gets up to 750,000 people during the summer. So it's a full on tourist town. Our county here is Worcester County. We only have 3 schools in the entire county, and 2 of the schools are 1As, and then you have Stephen Decatur, which is a 3A. So not very many people on the side, but during the summertime it's full on. So
it's funny. So I just did a little Googling here on the old map on the map machine, and as a crow flies from Richmond to Ocean City, not that far, but you can't do that. You can't go straight across the Chesapeake Bay. Well, I guess you could if you have a boat, but it's basically almost a 4.5 hour drive. So it's either go down to Virginia Beach, go across the Bay Bridge Tunnel, which for you guys who aren't familiar, that's something like a 17 or 24 mile bridge tunnel system that goes across the Chesapeake Bay to the southern tip of the Eastern Shore, which down there is Virginia, and then you head up into Maryland. Or you go all the way up to D.C., almost to Baltimore, get across, and then come down. So first question, and then we're going to talk about you. How does being way out there in this sort of, I'm going to say island. It's not an island, but you're kind of on an island, just separated from the rest of the mainland, the rest of the world over here to the west of you. Does that throw a wrench in your summer travels?
Well, so interesting thing is, we're kind of in a spot where, you're 2.5 hours to Philly, you're 2.5 hours to Baltimore, and you're 2.5 hours to Norfolk, pretty much dead center. Ooh. So, when it comes to travel, there's a regional airport in Salisbury, which is, about 20 minutes where we're at. But for the most part, it's pretty expensive to fly to that. And then, then you add in the fact of, hey, what kind of local events can we compete in? PBR runs an event here at the beginning of June, but other than that, there's no local events. So, when some of the other programs have the luxury of saying, hey, we're going to go play at this place, 15 minutes down the road, when we call local, we're talking about going to, MSI in Philly, or we're talking about going over to one of the colleges in Baltimore. So when we basically say local, it's within 2.5 hours, which is, people don't consider that local pretty much nowhere else.
Yeah, that's, and again, I wouldn't even thought to ask that question about y'all specifically had I not pulled up the map and started, checking out where you guys are. What could be a negative is also a positive, though, because there are good events down in the Norfolk, Virginia Beach area. There are good events in D.C. and Baltimore. There are great events in Philly. So, you know what? It's kind of nice to be central to all of those. Let's back up a minute, because I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself and introduce the Aces. So I'll just hand you the mic, and you don't have to go all the way back to T-ball, but give the listeners a little bit of an idea, who you are, what some of your baseball background is, and then how the Aces came to be.
Okay. So obviously you introduced me earlier. My name is Dave Whigham. I played locally here at Stephen Decatur, graduated 2003, and then went on and played college baseball at Guilford College in North Carolina. After several seasons there. After my junior year, I transferred to Virginia Wesleyan, spent a season there, and then went and played independent baseball for several years. Suffered a head injury in 2009 where I was pitching, and I took a line drive off of my right temple. I had to get 2 brain surgeries and was, in and out of consciousness roughly for 2 weeks. Had to learn pretty much how to do all my functions again. And then I went on and played in Australia. I played in Europe, and it kind of led me to, what I did now with the Aces. It was funny because right when I was starting the Aces, and I had talked to you before about this, at that same time I just graduated grad school, and my whole dream was to be a sports information director. And I was offered the sports information director job at Virginia Wesleyan 2 weeks before I actually unveiled the Aces plan. So I had to make a decision, am I going with the risk of creating this baseball program and taking everything I learned from my head injury and all the years I had playing and creating opportunity that I didn't have when I was younger here, or do I follow that dream that I basically have spent all of my schooling on, that luckily was presented to me by my alma mater, handed to me from a guy I truly respected a lot, Joe Wasilick, who was the SID at Virginia Wesleyan beforehand. And then, it's funny. I kind of sat down and I was like, I got to take a run at this thing. And, I learned real quickly that, if you're not willing to take a risk on something, it's not really worth doing things in life. And so I took this risk, and I started the program in 2014. And, we had our growing pains, and we slowly built, and we started with 15 teams in year one right from the start. And, fast forward to today, 7.5 years later, we are a large program. We have 52 teams that encompasses everything from Wilmington, Delaware to Cape Charles, Virginia, and then over towards Kent Island right before you get across the bridge. So bridge separates us from the large cities, and we basically control that entire peninsula now.
That's funny. Your last phrase was almost verbatim what a friend of yours told me recently, was that y'all control that entire area. And I didn't really get it. Now I pull up the map. I'm like, oh, now it makes more sense. Now it makes a lot more sense because you've got a moat, a literal moat, sort of protecting your territory, if you will.
I guess that's what you want to call it. Yeah, I mean,
it's a gigantic moat called the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, I remember when I first started. One of the main things I learned, I went and as I started this program, I toured a facility in Texas. I toured a facility in Florida. And I moved around. I was like, I'm going to learn, right? I went down to the WWA underclass and kind of watched how coaches talk to scouts. And I'm a big learner, so I like to listen, I like to learn, I like to watch. And yeah, so one of the main things I learned from one of the guys when I started, and the first thing he said to me is, if I can give you any advice, it's control your territory. Before you can go anywhere else, control what your area is. If you can't control your area, it'll never work for you. And that was 2014. He told me that.
Yeah.
That's been our main goal this whole time.
Yeah, you know what? I'm impressed by that. That's a really good piece of advice. You see a lot of people currently that aren't necessarily that big or dominating their area, yet they're looking to sort of like franchise out their name. You're like, wait, but like your name's not that valuable even where you are. So that's sort of interesting. You guys can catch up with Dave over on Twitter, twitter.com, over at Delmarva Aces, and over on the website, also the same thing, delmarvaaces.com. Definitely want to give a shout out here, another free plug for League Apps. The website looks awesome. And right before we hit record, I was asking, hey, you doing this yourself? And nope, it's a League Apps website. It looks great. So I know a lot of the folks who've been on the show are League Apps users. But this particular site looks sharp. So I know they've got a lot of ability to customize what you're doing with your front facing website. Looks really good.
Brilliant. I mean, we did it over quarantine, over COVID, and those guys just were super helpful. I mean, they've changed how we go about everything, and yeah, shout out to those guys. They're great.
Yeah, definitely. Big fans. Give a little more sort of context to how you go from, because I feel like this is a big part of your story. How do you go from getting domed in a literally hanging on to your life by a thread to how was that the sort of the catalyst to starting up the Aces? Connect those dots for me.
Yeah. Okay. So, when I was injured, I was a 22-year-old. I was pitching the American Association in independent ball, obviously in Texas. And when that ball hit me, I remember being in the hospital and, just sitting there. And I remember they told me, the different types of opportunities that I was coming. I wasn't drafted. I grinded it out in college, went to D3, and I put myself in the scenario of where, I'm going to prove myself to go the independent ball route. And I did. And as I find myself laying in that bed, I'm thinking, if I can survive this, like the rest of my life, I'm just basically just going to do things that is going to make me happy and almost like live my life like it's going to be one large risk. And, when I started the program, and this might be different than what everybody else had. I invested $7,000 into this program in 2014. I had no backers. I had nothing. So basically, what I did was I took $7,000 that I saved up from doing pitching lessons and training when I was in grad school. By the way, when I was in grad school, I was making $15,000 a year just to stay afloat. So I took the $7,000 and I invested, and I bought some merchandise, and I sold the stuff at the kickoff party. I mean, at our opening tryouts and our kickoff party. And all of a sudden that money kind of grew a little bit. And then I invested that money back into buying new turf. Then I invested that money into buying batting cages. And then I took all this money and I went, and I mean all in, took chips, pushed them right to the middle of the table and said, I'm going to commit my life to this particular opportunity. And I think what you've seen over the course of the 7.5 years, we've grown because of the commitment level that I put in, and then the commitment level that I've surrounded myself with, the guys that working with me. I mean, we're all in on this. And I know a lot of people say, come play with us because, we're the best instructors and we're the best, blah, blah, blah. We've actually learned the most from watching other people's failures. So, like, people that were saying this, and that. So when I say, like, all in, I learned from the things that somebody else didn't do that I am pushing those chips to the middle of the table with and saying, this is what I'm going to do as well on top of what I've already done. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And so 6, 7, 8 years later.
We started 2014, yeah. So, we're about 8 years in.
Yeah, you were describing your facility to me the last time we spoke. I'm guessing that's not the same place that you started. How many?
It is.
Same place?
Same place. We've grown in it. We've put, and there's an outside spot now. We started originally as 15,000 square feet. Basically 3 buildings in one. It was an old Budweiser beer distributing building. We have a weight room with a plyo room in there as well. We have a full bat cage with offices, a batting cage with offices, and then a side cage in the other room. And in the back, we have 8,000 square feet of just open area.
That's impressive that it sounds like, and from the pictures I've seen, it's like really nice and something that a successful, almost 10-year-old program would sort of move into. Not something that some guy who's got $7,000 to his name is going to move into for his first place. Did you get a smoking hot deal because the place smelled like a brewery?
Well, it's interesting because when we moved in there, it was supposed to be us and a softball program, and then it ended up just being the Aces that did it. And we ran into a lot of trials in that first year. And then kind of going back to like my head injury, like I remember the first year, like we didn't have any heat. We didn't have, I mean, that was brutal. And then we ran into a situation where we weren't actually coded by the fire department. So we had to go and get all things done, build a new parking lot, you know, put in all kinds of different types of doors, create separations in between the buildings that, you know, were fire rated. That was an interesting thing. And then, you know, we went through a lot those first couple of years, and sometimes you're pulling your hair out and you're just like, God.
Those are the things, no matter how prepared you think you are, there's still so much you really actually don't know until the fire department knocks on your door and says, hey guys, there's some problems here.
Yeah. But, you know, it's honestly like the whole process is like, it's so much more rewarding, you know, to not have any donors or backers that you look at and say, you know, like, hey, like, because of you, like, that's the reason why we even started. Like, people are so surprised when they walk in that facility and they're like, hey, can I talk to Dave? And I'm like, I'm Dave right here. And they're like, I was expecting you to be like some like 65-year-old guy, like, or with like gray hair. Here I am with blonde hair and wearing board shorts and
yeah, where it says the owner on the website is Dave, and so you figure just the owner is this like absentee owner who invested his money to become the owner, and he's got some guys running it. No, that's not the situation here. It's owner operator and on site. Not only on site, but you were telling me something that was pretty interesting before from a communication standpoint. You're in direct communication with literally every single kid in your organization. That sounds awesome, and it sounds a little bit like a nightmare in some ways too. But tell us, do you mind we already name dropped league apps. Tell us who you're using for, or what app you're using for communication, and just give us a little perspective and background of what your phone looks like on a daily.
Yeah, so, you know, we use Telegram, which is like a kind of like a social networking thing, communication. So basically what we do with that is every one of our teams is required to have a group, you know, thread where we post all of our information in. You know, people are big into Facebook, people are big into Instagram, Twitter, yada, yada, yada. But there's some people that just haven't moved down that route yet. And, you know, it's essentially on the Telegram, every single team that is a part of our program is on a thread, and I'm in every single thread where I drop in everything that we do. I follow, I answer questions. It's basically my direct access to every single player and every single coach and every single parent in the organization. Now, sometimes it's a little bit, you know, much when you have people messaging you asking about what colored socks they should wear and stuff like that. But for the most part, like the content that we put on there and basically the communication it's so valuable, because what people want, in my belief, is they want to feel like their opinion matters, that their voice is heard, and that they have some type of communication that's being heard. You send emails out. Again, I told you before, I'm not a big email guy. I think that with all the crappy spam going around and all the emails that just aren't worth reading, it just bogs down email boxes, and you find yourself sifting through all this bad emails. And while the communication on Telegram, that's only my teams. Like, there's nobody else that I'm following on there besides my team. So when I log into Telegram and I see there's 40 messages from one team, I can browse through it. Most of the time, I don't even always read everything that's being said, but like when they at me or they say different types of things, I can find out like, hey, I need to pop in this chat. Boom, your pants are going to be here on Wednesday, and you should show up at this facility by 11 o'clock, or hey, the sizing is on this date, or we got camps here, blah, blah, blah.
I think this is probably for anybody who's listened to any of the episodes, this one little nugget of info might have just changed somebody's entire summer. And I don't think I'm exaggerating, because listen, I've had 100+ of these conversations. I know uncountable owners and coaches of these different organizations, and the communication internally is all over the place. And I'll tell you, most of it stinks. Sometimes it's not the coach's fault. Sometimes it's the parent's fault. Sometimes it's the kid's fault. But, the team that can do that at an elite level has a huge advantage. Good on you that you've implemented. It doesn't have to be Telegram, but man, coaches, figure it out. You got to be able to communicate both internally and as well as externally. That's awesome. I've never used Telegram, so I have no idea what you're actually talking about. But I'm going to take a peek at it, and I think other coaches probably should too. Hey, so I want to transition over to some of these questions. I'm looking at the clock, and I want to make sure I'm not keeping you too long here today. So, I'm very curious about this first one because you describe yourself as a learner. I think you said that multiple times. So I'm very curious if what book or movie or website do you think every coach should be reading or watching or learning from?
Being a learner, I think that as I've gotten older, I hated reading when I was a kid, by the way. I did not like to read that much. I thought I was just reading just to try and fill classes in and have to do assignments with it. But over the last probably about 4 or 5 years, I've really got into different types of reading because I feel like when you read, it's easier to just lock in and figure it out rather than watching a movie. You can have your phone and play with your phone on the side or stuff like that.
Hard to read a book and scroll your phone simultaneously, I found.
Exactly. It's even hard. I sometimes will throw headphones in and listen to some type of smooth jazz. Or I don't know, different types of soft music. But anyway, so I read a book. Let's rewind probably about a year ago. My sister's husband, he was a basketball player in South Carolina, and he was right around Christmas, and he was reading this book, and I was like, hey, what's that book about? And he's like, oh, this is the book that changed my life. It's the second time I've read it. And he starts telling me it's about this Navy SEAL that was running ultra marathons with broken shins and blah, blah. Have you ever heard this story about this guy named David Goggins? He was,
he's very well known. Maybe not out there inside your moat over in Delmarva, but I would say David Goggins is pretty internet famous in the sort of that inspirational genre. He's awesome. He's really awesome. So, which book is that, by the way? I'm looking it up now.
It's called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, and it's just talking about just the things that you can do, as a person, outside of the what you think you can do. Yeah. He talks about the 40% rule, and he talks about how you only actually tap into 40% of what your body and your mind is really capable of doing, and talking about that the people that say that they can't do things. And again, this moves with my head injury, and I like to really go back to things that kind of go and intertwine with what I kind of was feeling after my head injury. So that book was super cool, and especially it's because every day as coaches or, as trainers or leaders, they talk about how we can use our minds to be able to create a better opportunity for kids, give them inspiration to want to be able to work harder, achieve bigger dreams, do different things. And, reading books of somebody trying to coach me in that fact of techniques that I can do and ways I can talk to kids that helps me out a ton. But the one I really want to talk to you about was this book I read recently. It's called Becoming Bulletproof. You ever heard about that book?
I'm going to look it up right now. It doesn't ring a bell. Becoming Bulletproof. I'm looking at it right now.
It's by an ex-CIA agent, and it talks about basically interactions, and she would basically focused in interrogations, and when she would talk with people, she would learn that take those techniques and learn how to read people better, nonverbal communication. So when people are lying to you, different types of ways, for instance, one thing, if you want to have a pleasant meeting with somebody, and this is one thing I never thought about. If you're going to have a pleasant meeting with somebody right from the very beginning, if you give them something warm, like a cup of coffee or whatever, that warmness means a friendship slash like openness slash like ways that make you feel comfortable. So immediately when you give somebody like, say, like a cup of coffee, they're more likely to like you than they are if you give them, say, a cold Coca-Cola. Did you ever know that?
No, I have not. No, I've never heard that.
And then like if you're willing to have a meeting, right? So like if say you have a meeting and you want to bring in a new coach or a new person to start your program, or a new kid that is down the road that you really want to play for your organization, and you in the room you have a couple open books and the windows are open, people are more likely to say yes to what you're wanting to do, because the openness makes them want to feel open and talk about what they want.
I love it.
Huh?
I love it. It might sound a little woo-woo, but you know what? I dig it. Becoming bulletproof by former CIA Eva. I'm trying to read her name here, and my screen just blanked out. Eva,
so like
Evie Pomporis. Pomporis. All right. I dig it.
So the reason why I just say that is that in this avenue, in this type of job that I'm in, and that most people that are on here listening to, like every type of way that you can to better yourself, or to learn more about other people, and to be able to create your program to be better, like you're willing to take every advantage you can to be able to make that happen, right? I mean, that's just the way business is, and the kind of the world that we're in, especially with such a competitive nature to it, that any type of advantage that I can create, I want to be able to give myself that advantage. And if that means having my meetings better, learning how to talk to my kids differently, being able to provide like an inspirational background after being, motivated, those things right there, I believe will give me an advantage over just the average Joe that doesn't want to go down that route. Does that make sense?
It does. No, it's a way of like, without being like crazy, that you're trying to disarm people with a friendly approach, so that there's a lack of confrontation. You're not putting people on defensive. I dig it. I'm gonna check this book out. Becoming Bulletproof. By the way, the other book you mentioned, I was going to say something, and then it's kind of funny. I'm looking at the cover of the David Goggins book, to go back to that for a second. In the foreground is sort of like today, modern day David, in a clean white Navy suit. And then you barely even notice in the background is the old David Goggins, the 300+ pound David Goggins. And I don't know his story verbatim, but this is a guy that was, morbidly obese and turned himself into a Navy SEAL. And that's sort of part of like what makes his background so inspirational to so many people, is that he whipped himself into shape, became a stud, and is now trying to get everybody else to understand that they can do that themselves. Two good choices, man. Two good choices here.
The thing that brought me about the David Goggins thing is when he said a guy ran an ultra marathon, 100 miles with 2 broken shins. Just to think about that is crazy.
Yeah, it's bananas.
It's nuts.
Yeah, it's bananas. Yeah, mind over matter, right?
Yes, sir.
This next question is, maybe we've already talked a lot about this with your particular situation, but I'll toss it out there. If there's anything you want to sort of add to the edges, or if there's a separate situation, separate story, then we can go down that route. What regret or failure changed the way you coach for the better? I mean, is it what we've already been talking about with your medical situation, or is there a different example that comes to mind?
Yeah, well, there's a different example that came to mind for me immediately. Obviously, with my head injury, I went through a lot of, trials and tribulations facing that, and I kind of just got to the point that was meant to happen to me at that time. Had a lot of people reach out to me about, armor for my hat and all those kind of things to be able to protect me. But at the same time, I never really – I knew that it was a 1 in a million shot, So like I've learned to just basically just swallow that and say, hey, that was meant to happen to me, put me where I'm life at now. But so there was a scenario that happened. It was a PG event. I was coaching 13-year-old baseball, right? This is taking me back, man. So that I'd probably say about 5 years ago. Okay. And I think that everybody is guilty of this at some point in their coaching career, of making it more about them when it comes to like coaching, or like forcing the win, or trying to do situations where I got to win this game, or I got to do this. And then you kind of take the entire, nature of why we coach this game and why we've played this game out of context. And so anyway, like I think it's like 2017, 2018, somewhere in there. And it's at a PG event, and I'm coaching a 13-year-old baseball game. And we lost, and we played horribly. And I lit my team up to a degree I've never lit up a team before in the outfield. Did they mean to suck? No, they didn't mean to suck. Did they mean to play badly and not throw strikes and have these situations? No, they didn't. But me at the time, I laid into this group, and I made it about myself. Like, we got to do this because of this, and we have to do this because of this. And I remember looking in the kids' eyes after that meeting, and I was like, man, I went home, and I obviously got the barrage of calls coming in for me about upset families. But, I went home, and I was like, what am I doing with my life right now? This is 13-year-old baseball. People make mistakes. I just lit into this team, basically almost made a couple kids cry just because of the way that they played. Now, were they hustling off the field? Yes. Were they doing all the little things that were outside of the game right? Yes. So anyway, after that day, I remember I was just like, I can't be like this. If I'm trying to be a positive role model, and I wanted these kids to learn from me, I can't make this about myself. This is about these kids, and it's about these families. And I think after that day, I learned that so much more power in coaching is in the relationships that you have. And if a kid can look at you and trust you and know that you've got his back, whether he makes a physical mistake on the field or not, there is so much more to life than lighting kids up on a sideline. And yeah. I'll never forget that day, because I went home that night and I said to myself, I can't keep coaching if I'm this. I'm doing a disservice to these kids by blowing up on them for the wrong reasons. And ever since then, honestly, it's you have your standards and how you're supposed to go about things, but I want this to be an enjoyable atmosphere. You're going to feel, if you make a mistake, I'm going to put my arm around you and be like, hey, this is what we got to do differently, instead of just being like, blah, 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 blah.
There's definitely a thin line between, the sort of correcting the kids, motivating the kids. It brings to mind, there's a video that's been going around the internet of some baseball coach. I don't know who he is or where he's from, but I guess some kid recorded the conversation in the locker room after the game, and the guys sort of doing like what you described, but probably 10 times worse, right? Because they're high school kids, and he probably feels justified in yelling at these kids. And the thing and there was a lot of coaches defending him. A lot of coaches saying, well, that's just old school, hard nose, Nah. You know what? It was the thing that got me on this particular example, because I think there's examples of it where you can just say, yeah, the coach was doing the right thing here. But in this example, he was upset because the kids were cussing, dropping F-bombs. The kids were dropping F-bombs. Except that in the recording of the coach dropped 100 F-bombs. And that was to me where the confusion came in. I'm like, why are people defending this guy? Of course his kids drop F-bombs, because he drops F-bombs. He's obviously created that culture where it's a normal thing. So, man, it's the fact that you went home and sort of had a conversation with yourself in the mirror about about that, means everything. Probably change the way you talk to the kids every single day.
Oh yeah, and the other thing I was thinking about is, so this last year I went and I played in this over 40-year-old baseball league, right?
Yeah,
so,
we need to make sure we don't gloss over that real quick. Before we move, give some background. Talk about talk about the Aces. How young do the Aces start, and how old do the Aces go? Give that context first.
Okay, so we have a Little Aces program, which is 5 to 7-year-olds. It's our development program. We have a lot of college coaches in the area that will run that. Former pro players and college guys will run our Little Aces program, 5 to 7. Then 8 to 18 is our development program. Every single player that's in our organization has a once-a-week academy. Again, former pro guys, former college guys, current college coaches, former college coaches that will run that, and they rotate in stations for 30 minutes each. And I also have a once-a-week practice with speed and agility throughout the week. So after the 18s, obviously you're moving into college. We have a college summer league team, the Delmarva Aces, in the Eastern Shore Baseball League, which is a league near us. A lot of our former alumni will come back and play in that. And essentially, it's in Salisbury, which is about 25 minutes away from us, and people come down and play in that league. So once you're done that, we have an over 40-year-old baseball team, an Aces over 40-year-old baseball team. And again, I played on that. They get 2 players that are under 40 that can be 35 and above. I'm 36. And like I said before, dude, I was an error machine in this league. Like, I'm a pitcher. I pitched in college, and they're like, hey, why don't you go play shortstop, and send some of the kids out there, hey, why don't you guys come watch me, expecting to do pretty well. Man, I was popping up with the bases loaded. And
oh, no.
Routine ground ball, sailing it over the dugout. So, I was, especially after playing this league, I was just like, holy cow, I'm not meaning to make these freaking errors, and this team is just, people are watching me, and they're like, they kind of maybe expected me to be a little bit better than that, and wasn't trying to make these errors. But anyway, it was just weird being back out there. And, I know one of the things you had asked me previously is, what really separates you guys is that in our separation is the fact that our youngest player in our organization last year was 5 years old, and our oldest player in the organization who was playing was 63 years old. So there's, a 58-year difference. And when I went and I played in Australia, and I went and played in Germany, or in Germany, Austria, was they run a family thing right on through. They have young, they have middle, they have old, and they have super old. And that's what's not really over here in America. And, I learned a lot when I went over there, and about the family and the club atmosphere and the different things. And a lot of these, programs these days, and it's a different model, and I don't expect all models to be the same. But they'll run, a showcase program where they have basically covered 3 age groups, and then from there on out, it's over, and you'll go and do whatever. But you can be Aces from the time you're in diapers to the time you're going into the nursing home. And we had, at one point last year, we had a grandson, a father, a grandfather, and a great-grandfather all playing in the program together, all wearing Aces jerseys
That's
on
awesome.
the field playing.
That is awesome. Definitely unique. I'm not sure I'm familiar with any other organization doing anything like that. I mean, I know about men's leagues, but most of those are guys that are, I guess it's guys of all ages, but the league by you're saying this is, it's sort of, it's 40 and over. So you're not getting that guy who's right out of pro ball at 25 coming in and dominating and putting a team together, a bunch of ringers.
Dude, when I went in that league, you got guys that are throwing 63 miles an hour. There's some former college guys and some former pro guys that are in this league, and it's super impressive. But for the most part, I mean, it's just a really good fraternity of guys that are out there just wanting to play the game, keep themselves active. And I remember by the way, shout out to Rich Swift. That's the guy who started this league. This guy, it's called the Ty Cobb Baseball League, right? And he does the statistics for it, the scheduling. He's actually created a summer Ty Cobb League, which is over 40, and he's also created a fall Ty Cobb League. And this guy is a baseball enthusiast. Yeah, man, and he's just fully committed to this, and he's brought so much energy to, like, guys that once thought, hey, I'm done playing baseball, that are back playing again. But I will tell you this, man, I've seen a lot of pulled hammies.
No, that's what I was thinking. I think I would try to avoid this league personally. Now, I think everybody else should go do it, but, man, I don't want a pulled hammy, a rolled ankle, a dislocated shoulder when I'm bound to dive for that ball up the middle. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Maybe I would do could I be like a designated hitter, but then has a pinch runner? I would do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, to be honest with you, like some of the best. I only play on this team. I mean, it's an Aces team, but my dad plays on the team too, and there's something special.
Oh, man, that's cool.
By the way, that 63-year-old, that's my dad.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
So there's something special about, getting on the field with him. Because, I never did that when I was younger. He'd always watch me from the stands, and my dad was a football player, and I would watch him, obviously, when I was really small. And it was just, that's honestly some memories this past fall that I'll never, ever forget, because, hey, my dad's at second base. I'm playing shortstop again, not doing a very good job there, but,
yeah, but you're there.
Yeah.
Are you like the manager of this team? Is that how you end up at shortstop every game? What's going on?
Well, just because I'm still fairly active. I run and I work out, and some of the other guys, they do the same thing too. But I'm the youngest guy on the team, so I had a lot of energy moving around. I think next year I might get sent to right field, though.
Wait, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but are you playing in this league illegally? I think you're a little younger than 40.
No, you're allowed 2 players under the age of 40. So
I got you.
You get 2
couple ringers. Couple ringers can
35.
come in. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Man, we almost had all your games from last year forfeited. I thought,
no.
Okay, loophole. I understand. There's a loophole. All right, let me ask you one last question here. This question can go a million different directions, and it often does. But what's one change that you think could be made to travel baseball that would have the biggest positive impact?
Okay. So
more 40 and over leagues. Travel ball for 40 and over.
Yeah. Create a family atmosphere. Obviously I think that everybody's going to say, make it more about the kid and, try and create a more of a family atmosphere. I'm sure that's probably the most common thing that you hear. I think that for me, and, I really didn't touch on this much about, how we push this. And, we put 152 kids into college over the last 7 years. And, again, that may not be the numbers that some of these other guys are putting out, but I've had a direct hand in every bit of it. But kind of what we've done is, as we start our freshman teams in our showcase, we have immediate talks and immediate conversations with the kids and the parents about the direction of college baseball and what they need to be doing. Hey, if you want to play at this level, we have to do this. If you want to have this type of grades, you have to do this. And so I think that, and this is what I hate the most about travel baseball. It's my number one thing I hate more than anything. And it's that if you're not a Division I baseball player, you're a failure. And some programs may not, say that that's what they're doing, but a lot of kids in this day and age are so gung-ho on attending this top-tier school that they forget about the school that's the right fit for them. And, again, I hear it more than ever. I'm about proper fits for my program. I'm about, putting my kids in the thing. I don't necessarily think that people really follows by that. And, I was a Division III guy. I had opportunities to play Division I baseball. Division III was the right fit for me at that right time in my life. And if a player isn't necessarily a top-tier Division I guy, I let those kids know that from the very beginning. And I'm super honest with them in the entire process. And for me, there's a lot of really good baseball programs in this nation after high school. Division III, Division II, Division I. We had 8 kids on the Division III national championship team last year, and we had 2 coaches from that team as well. And I just wish there was more honesty right from the beginning and more being like, this is the type of schools that fit your ability to play baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of it being like, well, if you do this, and this, like you can go play at these schools. But like, I think that you need to really look at that, because what I've seen more than ever is the 11th hour that comes in and kids scramble at the last second to try and find a place. And that is the most heartbreaking portion of it all. They've invested all of their time going to the wrong camps, to the wrong places.
That's right.
And then
it often is not a function of money; it's a function of time.
Exactly.
The two quickest things that a kid can do right now, or a family can do right now, is go see games at every level and go see campuses at every level. Every time you get in the car, pull off the highway, jump on a campus. You do not need it to be some formal tour with the college coach or the admissions. Just pull off the highway and walk around. All these campuses are wide open, because you will begin to figure out what your desires and wants are and what your needs are. And when you haven't been on a bunch of different campuses, I'm not talking about baseball fields. All the baseball fields are the same, man. They're all the same. They're 90 foot down the line, 60 feet 6 inches to from home to the plate. And it's like there's a big difference between schools. And you got to go touch them and feel them and smell them and figure out where you fit in. They're different sizes, different shapes, different geographies, different everything. So I think that's the 2 quickest, and honestly, it's basically free to go watch games and walk around campus. Because you're right, man. And sometimes you talk about like where maybe it's the organization that's overvaluing the D1 thing, because it's like, oh man, if we place this guy in a D1, it's going to be better for our track record or our resume. But sometimes it's the kid in the family who maybe it's not even their fault. Maybe it's not even their fault. It's just like they lack, the real information. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it's more of an honesty thing. I got to be honest with you.
And true.
Because let's be real. Salisbury, like if you look at a person, we have a large commit wall in our facility, right? It has every commit that's ever been out of our program.
Yeah.
And people immediately scour to find, the guys committed to Maryland, the guys committed to Liberty, the guys committed to, Navy or Delaware. And they're skipping over the guy that was a 4-year, all-conference guy, Penn State Altona. Or they're skipping over the guy who's the one that was the first out of the Penn National Championship game for Salisbury University. Yeah. But the thing is that those fits were right for those types of kids. Like, we've put kids in a lot of different places, and I value it more than anything. That's the thing I value. And this Sunday, after our media day on Saturday, all of our showcase program is going to the Salisbury University against Cortland game, because they want to see what they don't value Division III baseball. Wait till Cortland's trotting out a guy low 90s, and Salisbury's counter it with a lefty, 88 to 90 himself.
Yeah,
and that's going to change their opinion on college baseball. But I feel that a lot of programs, would want to just send their guys to, hey, we're going to go check out this major Division I game. When you look across the board, that only about 6 of those guys are really going to benefit from being at this game.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny because like you look at the experience too, the whole well-rounded experience. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but you can look at some of these mid-majors and they're not going to postseason. Like, they're just not. Meanwhile, that Randolph-Macon and Salisbury are going to compete for a title, a national title. They're going to a regional. They're going to a super regional. They're going to the World Series. Like, that's what they do. That's what they do every year. And if they fall short of that, that's almost surprising. It's like, man, what an experience. So anyway, man, that's I think that's a good one to end on. Do you have any sort of parting words of wisdom for any coaches or parents or players who still might be hanging with us to this point?
Like my big thing, Rich, is, and I told you this a long time ago, I'm a big fan of what you do. And, I've followed your podcast for a while, and I think that what you're doing for this landscape and this travel baseball world is really good. And kind of, because there's really no, like, unifying body of, like, like ABCAs for, like, colleges, and they have, like, these huge meetings and everything. And, we're on this portion of, of our lives, and, like, I like to learn from other travel baseball programs, and I'm sure that they'll learn from me, and they'll take the things that we do well and the things we don't do well, and maybe it'll make themselves better. And I think that, like, I wish there was some type of, like, a unifying body that could bring us together and, like, have almost like a smaller type of convention with, like, discussions and Q&As.
It's an interesting idea. That's
what
it.
You do, Rich, is, like, super impactful for, like, guys like us.
Well, maybe I'll be the guy to do that, where maybe at ABCA we can peel off and get all the guys, big and small, national, local, regional guys, all in a room together and talk about some things. Well, I appreciate you coming on again, Dave Whigham. You can find him over at Delmarva Aces on .com and over on Twitter. Great job, man. Hey, hang on 1 second. Let me stop the recording, but don't hang up.